Hello everyone, welcome back to Christendom Rising, an occasional video magazine programme that looks at traditional Catholicism from Lanherene Convent near Newquay in Cornwall. I'm your host, Sophie Oliver. In our last episode, we looked at Catholic education, its importance and where it stands in the modern world, many thanks to all who took part. Coming up in today's programme, we have a special on Catholic dating and marriage. Dating can be difficult in the traditional Catholic world. For women, it can be hard to find men who are both respectful towards them and also encourage them to live by the teachings of the Church. Because of this, it can be difficult to find a good Catholic husband. This is where Catholic Match comes into its own. Catholic Match is an online dating site specifically tailored for Catholics to meet other Catholics. So first, I caught up with Michelle Buscombe, who also successfully used Catholic Match to find her husband. So I'm here with Michelle Buscombe to talk about Catholic marriage and dating, specifically online dating. Michelle met her husband John on Catholic Match, and I met my future fiancé on Catholic Match as well. So we're just going to talk about the difficulties of dating in the secular world and the benefits of having Catholic online platforms. So Michelle, how did you meet your husband?
Well, I met him on Catholic Match. I kind of went on as a joke with one of my friends, and then later on I started looking and I saw John's profile and I was like, let me have a look at this. And immediately after reading like what he wrote about how he feels about his faith and his upbringing, I immediately liked him, or like the idea of him. Someone who believed in all that the Catholic Church teaches and is willing to believe anything that the Church teaches, someone that holds the same values as me.
So those are very good qualities that you would be looking for in a husband, obviously.
It's not easy to find someone, I guess.
Exactly, that was what I was going to ask you next. So what struggles did you encounter sort of in dating, before getting married, that made you turn to Catholic Match in the end? Like, what led you there? Because obviously, like, everybody wants to meet someone in a natural way and just sort of bump into the perfect Prince Charming who happens to be Catholic and, go to Mass every Sunday and stuff. But, like, online dating is obviously sometimes feels like a last-ditch attempt. So what led you there?
Some of it felt like that. I guess coming from Ireland, everyone's Catholic. Well, generally, everyone is baptised Catholic in Ireland, but they're not actually practicing Catholic, or they don't believe everything that the Church teaches. I wanted to meet someone naturally, like say my grandparents met at a dance and my parents met at... Oh, really?
I was going to bring that up as well.
Like, I mean, that's a lovely place to meet, but I couldn't just go into a shop and be guaranteed they were going to be Catholic, and that's not what I wanted for myself or my future family. So I decided to go on Catholic Match and find someone who would agree with me.
Yeah, of course. That's a good point you bring up about meeting people who are Catholic but not really Catholic. It's very hard because people can be nominally Catholic and then you'll find out later on in a conversation that they actually don't believe half of the Church's teachings on contraception. I've met Catholics who think that it's alright to have a homosexual union. I've met Catholics who think it's okay to artificially contracept. I've met Catholics who believe a whole host of things. Divorce is okay, So it's not enough anymore to just meet somebody who's Catholic and be like, okay, well that will do, that's enough. You have to look even further because you're looking for almost a traditional Catholic or a super practicing Catholic as opposed to just a baptised Catholic. And
exactly.
That's really difficult because it's already hard enough to meet people because most people aren't Catholic at all. Well, I suppose in Ireland more of them are, but in England they're not. So it's hard enough to meet people in the first place. And then when you feel that you're at least around Catholics, that's still not enough sometimes, and you have to go that step farther for the future that you want. So it is very difficult.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's a good point.
I had like a mind change because years ago, before I met John, I thought I could marry someone who wasn't Catholic or maybe Catholic but not practicing, and I thought I'd be able to change them. I thought it'd be no problem. My mum married a Protestant, and thankfully he became Catholic a month ago.
Thank God,
But that's after 25 years of marriage.
Sure, yeah.
And I realised after going to a Catholic college and seeing some of my other friends marry Catholics, I was like, actually, that's what I want.
Yeah.
That I want to be completely open with my husband. I don't want there to be any arguments about my faith. You know, because we have to bring children into that. I don't want my children looking at two different ideas and me trying to put them down one path and my husband putting them down another path.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I don't have to worry about anything
I mean, in a sense, you just don't want, you know, you want to be able to rest easy with a husband who you don't have to worry about, you know, like, oh, look at this catechism question, or you can't do that, dear. You know, you want to be a unified front for children. And, you know, I think a big problem in secular society and, you know, the reasons for divorce and people splitting up and, you know, children having, you know, a very fractured family is when parents are not a united front on anything, you know, and they're always fighting, and the children see this discord and this disunity, whereas, you know, faith holds a couple together and keeps them on the same moral wavelength, and that's extremely good for the upbringing of children. So that's a really wonderful thing. Why do you think that so many young women are turning to online dating? Because I've met quite a few people that have had to go on Catholic Match, and it is really sad. Like, as you said, you were saying about your grandparents meeting at a dance. My grandparents told me the same story, and I was like, that's so romantic. Imagine just going to a dance hall and meeting someone who just happened to be a practicing Catholic, and you just happen to marry them and spend the rest of your life with them, which would be amazing. It'd be so much more Cinderella than Catholic Match. But
it would be.
It's no longer the case. So why do you think that's happening?
No. Well, I guess they're kind of probably worried about their future, and I mean, in a society where people are turning down the wrong road all the time, and people, I mean, even people of faith, their children are not keeping the faith. They realise that they need to go that extra mile, that extra step, and start out kind of ahead of everyone else. Because marriage is hard. I mean, it's not easy.
It's already hard without the question of faith.
It's hard without the question of faith. I mean, you need to turn to God every time. You're going to have arguments about, or disagreements, I wouldn't even say argument, but disagreements about practical things. But when you're united and you can turn to God and you can pray together, it's like everything is okay again.
Exactly.
So I think they realise that that's what they want to find.
And do you think, like, it's a struggle now to find decent men in the world? You know, like finding young men.
I think so. I think there's. I mean, from my experience, I have more Catholic lady friends than Catholic men friends. I don't know. I mean, society is kind of always slamming men and trying to put women out on front, but or women out on top. But I guess that's not really what it should be.
No, and I guess that comes from, it's a problem on both sides. I think it comes from a wider, you know, secular issue, like moving away from just Catholic circles, which I would have always sort of been in before. You know, in the secular world, the problem is that women are trying to be men, and men are just sort of like fading into the background, becoming more effeminate, you know, they're not being held up. And I think the problem is that, you know, men need to be allowed to be men by the women, you know, and we have to hold ourselves with dignity and demand respect, and men have to be respectful of us, but they're not going to be respectful of women if women comport themselves in a way that doesn't demand respect. So it's kind of a vicious cycle that never ends, which means that, you know, marriages are very unhappy in the secular world. The rates of divorce are through the roof, you know, children having multiple half-siblings from several different marriages, you know, abuse happening. And I think it comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a man and what it means to be married and have a family. So I don't know, I feel like that's probably why a lot of women are just getting disheartened and unable to find a husband. You know?
They want someone who's going to lead their family.
Exactly.
I mean, the husband is the head of the house. Precisely. And it's kind of a hard idea to like straight away when you hear it.
I think we're trained to not like it though. You know, society is always like, you know, no, we don't like the words authority. We don't like the words head of the family. Those are sort of buzzwords in the media and stuff. It's just like, no, misogynist alert, like, stop. But in reality, that's not true, and it is as God ordained that.
And it's a beautiful reality. I mean, if you
nice
understand it properly.
Somebody else take control. It's just like, you know. But that is the fact of the matter. But I wonder if it would be easier for people to meet, you know, other Catholic people if there were more Catholic events or more Catholic communities. You know, like we were talking about dance halls and things like that. I wonder if it would boost the ability to find a husband if there was more like Catholic dances, for example, or
social events.
You know, because back in the day, obviously, everybody had a basic moral compass. And I say that loosely, but I feel that, you know, at the turn of the century, whether you were Protestant or, you know, Catholic or whatever religion you practiced, everybody had an idea of what people, you know, how to comport yourself. You know, you didn't sort of sleep around. You didn't do anything before marriage. You waited until marriage, you know, and that's completely lost in today's society. I mean, it is just do whatever you want and it's fine, as long as you're happy and you feel good about yourself. So I wonder if like so you can't go to any old social event and expect to meet someone because you have no idea what their background is or what they believe or don't believe. So I wonder if it would be helpful if, you know, there were more Catholic conventions for young women. You know?
Definitely. Even like truly Catholic colleges. I mean, that's where I met all my Catholic friends.
Same. Yeah.
And some of them actually got married to each other. So
lovely.
they met their future spouses there.
Education, that's another big thing, I think, like, because there's no such thing as an actual Catholic school or university anymore, you know, only in name, and even then that doesn't mean much. You know, how are you supposed to meet people who have been educated as you have, in the catechism, in the faith, you know, in seeing the world in that way? So I suppose like a growth of Catholic schools would also help future generations find husbands, you know, and wives, and vice versa. So my next question is, why is it so hard to meet people of like mind? But to be fair, we've kind of covered that already. Sort of like the fact that there's no proper education on what marriage is. Another thing I thought of was that, you know, today there's a real push for career over marriage and a push for monetary material things before, you know, just becoming a wife and having children. That seems to be very frowned upon, as we were saying before.
Yeah, it is. I actually wrote my thesis when I graduated from college about the role of the mother in the home.
That's lovely.
Which is originally something I was like, oh, the mother isn't supposed to be in the home, they're supposed to be out working. But as I started to discover my faith more and understand it, I realised the beauty that's behind it. I mean, we're raising the future generation. That's what I'm doing. And I mean, sometimes you feel like because society places such a value on money and earning money now, that you feel like you're kind of a bit of a waste, or that you don't have a true value in society. Whereas that's not the case.
It's very much the opposite. I remember a priest telling me once that like the goal of parents was to populate heaven with more souls, because the fallen angels were kicked out of heaven, so there's millions of places left, and that's the job of the family to populate heaven again. And I thought that made me look at marriage in a completely different way, actually. I really thought of it like that. But
they're little souls that have been entrusted to us, and we have to get them to heaven.
Exactly. And what greater role could you possibly have, do you know? I mean, you know, I think a lot of the time in society what happens is that, you know, I was talking to my brother about this, you know, women, I hate to say it, but your women have a fertility clock. So you can't, if you want to have a family, you have to get married sooner. But often in society, women are just pushed to have a career, to be a lawyer, to be a doctor, to do this, that, or the other, to study for years and years and years. And therefore they're just focused on this path so they can get a, you know, 50 grand paycheck at the end of the year. And then they get to the age where, you know, they're in their 40s or their 50s, and suddenly they're just filled with this immense regret, because they may have a lot of money and, you know, designer clothes and own a house, but for what, you know, for nothing. They have no children,
family,
no husband, nobody to bequeath that to share it with, you know. And I think that becomes very, very empty, and I think that leads to a lot of people being very, very empty. Without knowing why, because in their minds they've done it all right. You know, I got the career. You know, I earn 70 grand a year. You know, I spent my whole life becoming a neurosurgeon or whatever. Why am I not happy? There has to be a reason why. You know, one of the highest diagnosed illnesses, if you will, is depression. You know, more people have it than ever before, and you wonder why, because people would lead you to believe that we live in the most progressive, materialistic society we ever have. You know, why aren't we happy? And, you know, I can't help but wonder if that's the reason. You know, I remember like Our Lady of Fatima spoke so much about the family and about, you know, chastity and purity and the destruction of the family, which is what Satan wants. And that's happened. I mean, the family has virtually no value, you know, by secular society standards. Sorry, I'm just talking at you there for a minute. So what do you, in your mind, what does marriage mean to you? In relation to what it has become in wider society?
Well, I guess it's primarily trying to get you and your ursdays to heaven.
Yeah.
So that's my role, I guess, is to try and get John, my husband, to heaven, and vice versa. He has to try and get me to heaven.
Yeah.
And then whatever souls we're entrusted with, we're blessed with life.
Yeah.
That we have to try and get them to heaven too. That is the primary goal. And after that, I guess it's trying to live out your faith as best as you can in your daily life.
No, that is lovely. And like, what do you think like the wider society sees marriage as now? You know, like, what would the secular person say when looking at your life as you live it as a mother of a small baby?
Right. I don't know. I guess it's two people that live together to sometimes to make life easier, I guess, because they're under one roof or help each other pay the bills.
Yeah.
I mean, there must be obviously some sort of connection that they have. But it's very hard to imagine a marriage without God in the middle.
Without the sacrament.
Without the sacrament of marriage.
I remember reading a study by the New York Times, so just a secular newspaper and stuff, and they were talking about that divorce rates between people who have lived together before getting married were exponentially higher than people who had waited until they were married to live together. So that's rather telling as well. You know, obviously the church puts that in place, so that is the case. But, you know, there's no restrictions on people's lives in the secular world. So it's interesting that a secular statistical kind of paper could come to that conclusion by itself. So that is interesting.
It's like almost like an afterthought.
Exactly.
They're already living together.
So they're just like, well, let's get married.
They might get married, or a lot of people don't get married either. It's like a huge cost.
Yeah. But it's very, you know, I think people forget that, you know, marriage is a real sacrament with graces that really work on the people involved. You know, like it is extremely important to have a sacramental marriage because you need those graces to get to heaven.
Yeah.
You know, you need the grace of God to keep, you know, keep focused on him. You know, it is very difficult, and I think a lot of people would look at people like you and me in the secular, you know, people in the secular world, but look at us and think, what idiots, you know, they're enslaving themselves to a man and enslaving themselves to children. But you know, in some senses we're called to be slaves to God, you know, that is what we're meant to do, and B, you know, it's not like that for us. You know, it is the most beautiful thing, and it is the most freeing thing. You know, the greatest freedom comes in giving all of yourself. And
it's our vocation.
Ultimately, that's what that's about. So what do you think about dating in today's society, sort of the period before marriage? Like, do you feel that more is expected of a woman now when it comes to dating than you would be willing to give over yourself?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think dating nowadays is something that people do for fun. You go out and you enjoy yourself with someone, and then oftentimes it goes further than that, where it shouldn't go before marriage. I think I remember before I met John, my husband, I listened to Father Chad Ripperger on courtship.
Yeah.
And I was like, courtship? Well, that's an archaic word. He uses that word now.
Yeah.
And after listening to it, I thought, wow, that is something I want to do.
Yeah.
And when I met John, he wanted to be in a courtship as well with someone.
Lovely.
It wasn't just dating or Catholic dating. We did actually use the word courtship to it. So I guess you have a period of friendship, which is where you get to know each other, and courtship is more intentional. You do it with marriage in mind. So I knew I wanted to get married, and John knew that he wanted to get married. So when you meet someone, you think, well, does this person have sufficient virtue for me to want to be married to him? And then you enter into a courtship. So he actually asked my father if he could court me, which is very old-fashioned, but it's
nice.
It's respectful, I guess, because he would be taking me on in a certain sense, because my father is the head of my house, and so I was under his protection, and John kind of wanted to come in and have a role. And then after the courtship, he asked me to marry him, and then we got betrothed. So we were engaged, and actually on the same day then we got betrothed, which has its own blessings.
Of course.
So it's why not get betrothed when you have extra blessings to help you prepare for marriage.
To get ready.
Yeah, and then obviously then you have marriage. That's the fourth step in courtship.
Yeah. Which is lovely. You know, that sounds so much more. You know, people would say that, you know, the church wants to destroy conventional romance, but I think that's completely the opposite. In fact, you know, the traditional way of doing things is so much more beautiful and so much more romantic, and as you said, intentional. And obviously in wider society we do nothing with intention anymore. It's just do what you feel like when you feel like it, and just sort of skip through life doing it as such. And it's, you know, far less rewarding in the end, I would imagine. You know, doing everything with a goal in mind, you know.
Yeah, I think courtship really helps you to learn about the other person.
Yeah.
Because you're asking those questions, because you don't mind. You have the word courtship around it, so you don't mind asking questions about, well, what do you think about this issue? And so we got all that out.
Like all of the, you know, normal, like I say normal people, secular people would have obviously not be saving themselves for marriage, and they would already be, you know, deep into the physical aspect of things before knowing the person, before understanding their values or their virtue, as you say. You know, and therein losing the potential of an actual relationship. But yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you, Michelle. Next up, we have two heavyweight French traditional priests working in England, Canon Montjean and Father de Malleray.
Catholic marriage could be quite a controversial topic nowadays, as we know. The Catholic marriage, the marriage as an institution, it's and even outside the church has been recently, largely in the past decades, has been largely challenged by whether by laws or behaviours. I'd say individual behaviours as well. The Catholic marriage has this kind of touch which doesn't exist in other religions or even outside the church. When you get married, when you start preparing your marriage, you think of, what am I going to prepare for this life? And we can certainly understand what's the point, because you're getting married for the time of the life on earth, and then the marriage ceases and ends at the death of one of the spouses, of course. So we are certainly, we have to prepare this the matrimonial union, and also as a lifelong covenant, and this is absolutely right and true. But we must not forget why deeply people want to get married. I know it's about living together, and this is where people would start maybe having dating a little bit, and with all the respecting of the morals and the teaching of the church, and not just the teaching of the church, because when you're dating you have to respect not just a law but a person, and this is really important. You respect someone. Because sometimes you hear people saying, oh yes, I'm starting dating, but you know, we don't always respect the rule of the church, of the morality. But it's not the question of the rule of the church. We are here talking about a person at the temple of the Holy Spirit. And this is where we must see this kind of preparation of a true friendship as a respect for a sacred touch or a sacred aspect of the human person. And this is very, very important, because if you only respect the rules, this is fine, but this is not, certainly not enough, and this is not enough to keep your marriage in the future. So in the future, if you want your marriage to last for long, until you die, you need to consider you are respecting someone and not just something. I'm not saying rules are not important, they are certainly, but they're here to guide us to the main goal. And when people get married, I'd like to remind everybody that you get married because you want to form a family, have children, but all of these, and form a community, of course, but all these different aspects of the marriage, which are absolutely necessary for this life, will be completely fulfilled, I would say perfectly lived, not as a marriage, but in heaven. And St. Francis de Sales says, of course, parents are having children to increase the number of saints in heaven. And this is a beautiful thought. So if we think the term of having children, procreation, it's the creation instead of God, not just for this life, but for the next one. And this gives certainly a different perspective to the marriage preparation. If you come in front of a priest for a marriage preparation, or someone who's delegated for that, and if the person says, we're going to prepare your eternal life, I believe, and so whatever you're going to do, whatever the way you're going to behave, you're going to see and to approach your future wife or husband must be different, because in the perspective of eternal life, it changes a lot, and it gives you another light. And I know the sacrament ceases again, but it doesn't mean that it terminates the relationship you can have as friends in heaven, and and you will be seen by your children as the mother and the father in heaven. It doesn't mean that they are still married. They are not, but they are seen as your mother and your father, because you're here. You receive the human life from them to become a saint. And this certainly, this approach of eternal life could be placed a little bit more into our actual marriage preparation, because I have the feeling that it has been completely brushed under the carpet, because we say, no, it's just for this life. No, it's for the next one. And I'm not afraid of saying it. It's for the next one, not a husband and wife, but as what we would say marital friends in heaven. And this is very, very important, and it gives another light to the marriage preparation.
God created marriage as a means for adults, men and women, to help each other go to heaven through the procreation and education of children. So marriage is not something which fundamentally is for the couple. It's not something which is essentially romantic. It is a service to God and a sanctification of self and of neighbor, that is the spouse and the children. And it's essential in the difficult times we live in, when marriage and the family are undermined in so many ways, to see clearly what is the purpose. Because then it helps young people make the right choice. When they become more intimate, sentimentally involved with somebody, they realize that however nice the person is, the point is he a good help for me to get to heaven? Is that person going to be a support in my sanctification and in founding and raising a beautiful Catholic family, or not? Somebody can have great skills and not to be called to be a husband or a wife, or not the husband and the wife of that particular person. It's difficult to find a wife or a husband in this day and age. The parish, the ecclesiastical circle used to give that opportunity at the parish club or parish events. A young man, young woman would meet with each other and would know, without needing to tell it, that everybody shared the same values, the desire for sanctity, and in that case, a chaste behavior, respectful of each other. It's not the case anymore, or apart from a few exceptions. And so in the traditional movement, we have alternatives. We have these pilgrimages, for instance. We don't do it to get married, okay? But it is an occasion for young people to get to do something together as a group, get to know each other in perhaps difficult circumstances when you're tired, having walked 20 miles, and in that constructive and a proactive setting, get to know each other and discover perhaps a possible wife or husband. There are other activities like the Juventutem youth group that we have when young people meet together, and there's the priest there. There can be fun, certainly, but also prayer together. So all these options are available for young people to get to know each other and to seek to discover in the soul and personality of the young man or young woman what really is going to be a help to go to heaven as virtuous spouses.
Next up, Stefano talks about the media and the pressures it can put on young people to conform to the hedonistic secular world and his vision for Catholic films.
I would like to say a few words about the secular media. For myself and some friends formed a media watch group called CUT, Catholics Unplug Your Televisions. For we found that there is not really one secular channel that you can be confident to sit in front with your family and watch without being offended or having Christian family values denigrated. So we encourage everyone to throw the TV out and just watch good Catholic programs such as found on EWTN, etc. You can watch these programs on demand, so no TV license is required, as long as it's not being broadcast at that moment. A lot has happened since our last Christendom Rising video. We finished the Message of Lourdes film and it was premiered on EWTN on the 8th of December. It was a great success. Many thanks to everyone involved. Another amazing event was the marriage of our host, Sophie Oliver, to Paul O'Shaughnessy. Congratulations to them both. And as this is a particular video themed to Catholic dating and marriage, I went to the wedding at Holy Angels, Torquay, and managed to get some great shots of the event. The marriage ceremony was a traditional Latin nuptial mass and was celebrated by Canon Tanner of the Institute of Christ the King. Here are some clips and photos.
Remember what St. Paul told the Ephesians. The union of a husband and wife is only to be compared to the union between Christ and his church.
I do solemnly declare.
si provata et innocent, era beatum rectum, atque a celestia regna perperia, et vidiat ambo filios et filium suum, usque a tertia partem generatione, era patam perenniat senectuta, per il Domino nostro Gesù Cristo, Dio tuo, qui deco vivi e regna in unitate Spiritus Sancti, per omnia secula seculorum. Amen.
Ready, so guys?
Don't forget to support the nuns at Lanherene Convent and the renovations of the chapel and St Joseph's Hall. Please contact Canon Smith. His details can be seen below. Mass times at Lanherne are at 8:30 a.m. and a sung Mass at 10 a.m. on a Sunday. Weekday Masses are Monday through Saturday at 8 a.m. and on Thursday there's a Mass at 8 a.m. and 6:15 p.m. At Holy Angels, Torquay, there is a sung Mass at 10:30 a.m. on a Sunday, on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday at 8:30 a.m. and on Friday there's a Mass at 12 noon. Mass in Plymouth is at St Edward the Confessor on Sundays at 8:30 a.m. Please contact the LMS rep for Devon and Dorset, Maurice Quinn, for info on Masses in Devon and Dorset. Please see his details below. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefano. In the next episode, we discuss how Catholics can remain true to the teachings of Jesus Christ and his Church in the modern world. That's all for now. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to this channel. So until next time, this is Sophie Oliver for Christendom Rising.